Hi everyone, you're listening to the Writers Podcraft, where my co-host and I examine popular media and articulate our thoughts about why the story works or doesn't. My name's Colin, and I'm joined by my co-host Lance. Lance, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2. So here's a brief recap. In episode 1, Bullseye kills Foggy, and Daredevil actually tries to kill Bullseye by throwing him off a building, but he survives. Because of this incident, Matt quits being a hero, and Karen moves out of New York. Fisk and Vanessa are also estranged, and Vanessa is the one who's running his business as Fisk comes back. Matt hooks up with a therapist, Heather, and Fisk becomes the mayor of New York at the end of episode 1. In episode 2, Hector Ayala kills someone while trying to stop two bullies, but both of them turn out to be undercover cops. Matt takes Hector as a client. Fisk gains popularity by publicly filling a hole that was causing traffic, which increases his goodwill in the public's opinion. Hector is denied bail, unfortunately. Fisk is interviewed by BB Urick, who is Ben Urick's niece, who he killed. Police Commissioner Gallo and a lot of other cops resign because they don't like Fisk. Matt's assistant talks to Hector's ex, and they snoop around in a room, and then it's revealed that Hector Ayala is the White Tiger, which they try to keep a secret. Kingpin later blackmails Gallo with his secret son and forces him to stay on the police force. Heather takes the Fisks as a client and tries to fix their marriage. After investigation, Matt finds the victim Hector saved and saves him from the cops that were trying to kill him. Matt is forced to beat them up after he tries to kill them, and that is the end of episode 2.
Yeah, so what are your general impressions really quickly about episodes one and two?
I thought there was a decrease in quality from like seasons 1 through 3, but it wasn't too bad. What about you?
Similarly, I thought there was a huge, well, I thought it was a much bigger decrease, and it was significantly worse than the original Netflix product. Um, we are only two episodes in, so it's hard to say if it's going to stay like this or if it's get better. We really don't know yet. But as of this minute, I think it was a big departure from the original series' quality. And honestly, from the story beats that were established in season three, primarily of the Netflix show, um, Kingpin's relationship to the police was a huge factor in season three. If you saw, firstly, we're going to talk spoilers for the original Daredevil show, for Born Again, and one of the big storylines for season three was that the police were very upset at the FBI that they cut Fisk a deal because Fisk had killed so many police officers in season one, right? In the finale, he does a jail escape, lots of SWAT people die. And this carries over into season three when the police are very upset at Fisk for orchestrating all these like mass murders. So much to the point where Blake Tower is almost usurped by Foggy Nelson when Foggy runs on a get Wilson Fisk back in jail promise for district attorney. This is really important for Born Again because there's a part where someone says that Fisk has about 50-50 support with the police. Half of them love him, half of them hate him. Some of them, like Police Commissioner Gallo, cannot stand Fisk, which is good because it shows that the canon is still consistent with the old Netflix show. But then I don't understand why 50% of the police officers are cool with him. Even if he's anti street level hero, like even if he's anti Spider-Man, anti Daredevil, like the police know he was responsible for killing a lot of their brothers. So I don't understand where this 50-50 comes from.
I agree.
That's one thing I definitely noticed, though.
Mm.
Some more things that carried over was that Bullseye inexplicably just murders Foggy, and it's very unclear why. I think there's a part where Matt Murdock tries to rationalize this in court when he's at Bullseye's sentencing hearing, and he says something to the point where a madman taking out grudges against perceived enemies. So I don't like this a lot because when you call something crazy, writers kind of feel like that's like a get out of jail free card where you don't need to establish motive, you don't need to like build things up because they're crazy, so you don't have to. That's a shortcut. And I think that's just a very lazy way of handling big moments, especially a moment like taking out one of the main characters for 3 seasons with no build up, no rationalization, and just pitting it on Bullseye. Oh, Bullseye's crazy, so that's why it happened. Also, Bullseye just never meets Foggy at all in season three, except for the Bolton shooting. And even then, he was not there for Foggy. He was there for the one informant who's going to turn on Fisk. It was not about Foggy at all in that moment. I don't even think he knew Foggy's name at that point. He only knew Karen by name.
Mhm.
And We saw kind of a callback to that in episode one of Born Again, where he says hello, Karen, to her again, just like he did at the Bulletin shooting in season three. There's a lot of callbacks in, well, they're not a lot, there are a couple callbacks in Born Again where we see Wilson Fisk talk about how he's a traveler of roads, how it brought him to be a new man in Born Again, which is why he's less violent, why he's trying to be more legitimized in Born Again versus the original like mob boss in Netflix show. And of course, as a callback to his monologue when he escapes the prison with the police, where he kills everybody in the season one finale. So it shows that the writers know just enough to kind of like trigger like callbacks, but then when it comes to canon consistency, absolutely just like blown up. I don't know where we're going with some of the old stories into the new stories. It's very strange.
Hmm. The main thing that I focused on was the change in dialogue. And if you look at the Born Again and the season three, both of them, they start off with one of Matt's closest friends dying, and then it's kind of his reaction to that. And in three, he gives up on his Matt identity and focuses on being Daredevil, while in Born Again, he gives up on his Daredevil identity and focuses on being Matt. And those are initially on the surface, those are very similar, but the way they're handled, I think it shows how much better season three was at doing this. Because in season three, Matt spends the first two episodes basically just reflecting on his decision to quit, on his emotions, and we get a lot of character development. We understand what he believes and we understand why he believes that because of all these long dialogue, monologue scenes that are navel gazing, as Dario said. And like we learn that he's given up on his faith, that he feels betrayed by his God. We learn that he believes that caring for people is what makes him weak, which he learned from Stick. And that's why he's staying away from his friends and not telling them that he's alive. We learn that he feels that he's lost his purpose, his calling, and that's why he wanted to die at the end of the first episode. And we learn all these little things about him, and we learn about Lantom and Maggie as well. So we get all this kind of character development from just the characters talking to each other and kind of reflecting on and introspecting on what has happened. Then we come to season three. We barely get any dialogue or introspection about the event that happened because Matt breaks his rule, right? He tries to kill Bullseye and he luckily fails, but that was his intention. This is the rule that he tried to protect in season two against Punisher. He was fighting tooth and nail just to stop another hero from breaking his own personal rule. But when he breaks his own rule, there is almost zero reflection on it, zero introspection on it. Kingpin says, I heard you tried to kill Bullseye. And all Daredevil has to say is he just nods. He doesn't say anything about it. There's no introspection. And then he explains that he quit being Daredevil because Foggy died. And then he said a line was crossed and he felt like he didn't have the right to be Daredevil anymore. And that's all we get. We don't understand what he means by he doesn't have a right. He said that he did good, but he was also causing damage. We don't understand what causing damage means. Like obviously there are going to be negative side effects to being a hero, but like you could argue that the pros outweigh the cons, and we just don't really get that introspection. Meanwhile, in the other season, season three, we completely understand why he abandons his friends. We understand why he only wants to be Daredevil, and I thought that was just weaker writing. And then Dario says that Dario obviously had that quote where he said that he wanted less introspection, but then in a recent video he said that he was taken out of context, but he didn't provide any context that would actually change the meaning of that quote. And then if you look at the writing in episodes one and two, we already see that there is a decreased quality of dialogue and introspection.
And to add to your point about the dialogue is really unclear in Born Again. Like there are so many examples, and in the very first scene, you have like really weird conversation between Matt and Foggy to catch you guys up. Foggy tells Matt he's got a client or a witness, and he stashed him at his own apartment, so Foggy's apartment. And this guy Benny tells Foggy on the phone, like, "Hey, there's some weird noises. And Foggy thinks he's paranoid. Matt says, I don't know if he's paranoid. He might be actually in distress. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Foggy says like he didn't want to give Matt a reason, presumably to suit up, be Daredevil, and go check out what's going on with Benny. When I first heard this, I was like, oh, okay, so we're taking play. We're after a little time skip. Matt's no longer Daredevil. Maybe Foggy wants to kind of keep him as a civilian for Matt's safety. As it turns out, no. Like, he is still Daredevil. So Foggy just for no reason kept the secret from Matt, which cost him his life a little bit later. It's weird because you wonder why did Foggy not want to give Matt a reason? Because like if it's been some time since the ending of season three, you think that Foggy is used to Matt being Daredevil at this point, so he
Mhm.
kind of get he should trust him to go defend who needs defending, which is in this case their client, just like they did for Grotto in season two. So that was just kind of confusing. Why would Foggy kind of withhold that other than to get Matt away from where Foggy is, so then
Mhm.
Dex can kill him? Of course, there's a scene in the courthouse where Matt's saying something about like Dex is a madman. That's why he killed Foggy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because, as we said earlier, Dex never really shared any significant screen time with Foggy. He barely spent any screen time with Matt as a civilian. He knew him as Daredevil, but not as Matt Murdock at all. So I don't know why Dex has a grudge against Matt. I don't know why he has a grudge against Foggy. I wouldn't even know why he would have a grudge against Karen, even though he had some amount of screen time with her in season three. And as Kingpin later says in I think episode two, he did not order the hit on Foggy. So presumably Kingpin didn't tell Dex this. Dex just went out and did it on his own. So we have a couple questions right now, right? Like, first off, how did Dex escape prison? Because last we saw he was paralyzed. Sure, they gave him some kind of injection to make him better, but it was just a little weird that we saw him in prison and now he's out of prison. And not only is he out of prison, he's killing people without motives, without explicit motives, at least. Then there's the other part, which is why is Fisk out of prison? We have a pretty definite ending on season three that he was going to prison willingly, so Vanessa does not go to jail for ordering the hit on Agent Nadeem. So Daredevil season three came out in about 2018, I want to say. It's been 7 years. Fisk has come back in Echo. He's come back in Hawkeye. He's now back in Born Again. Now the answer might be in Echo because I didn't watch that. But otherwise, I don't know why Fisk is out of prison. Like, to this day, I still don't know how he got out to the point where even half the police officers now support him. That's a huge shift, and there's no tangible reason why this happened. That was just very strange and stuck out to me. What did you
Mhm.
think?
I actually really agree, and that continues with the dialogue. Back then, back in the other seasons, when a character made a decision or a character did something, there would be loads of dialogue explaining how their thought process, how they got to that point, and why they did what they did. Meanwhile, here they're being vague. I can't tell if they're being vague due to incompetence or because they know they're BSing. Because, like you said with the Foggy thing, what was his thought process behind all of that? Why didn't they explain why he didn't want Matt to be Daredevil? He just kind of says, "I don't want to give you an excuse." Like, what does that? What does that mean? Based on the history, how does that connect to the previous seasons and his actions in those seasons? And then they said, Bullseye targeted Foggy. Why did he do that? We don't know because there isn't enough dialogue explaining why. It just says, "Oh, Madman." That's it. And how did Kingpin get out of prison? We don't get a monologue explaining that. We don't get dialogue. We don't get anything. They just kind of speed running it almost. That's what it feels like. But the problem is that they're speed running and the content we're getting isn't even that exciting or fast. Do you agree with that? Or do you think this is moving well?
No, I agree. I think episode one particularly was paced horribly just because you have two unconnected stories. And it is unconnected. They will tell you, like, Bullseye had nothing to do with Kingpin. Kingpin's running for mayor. It has nothing to do with Dex killing Foggy. Nothing.
Hmm.
Completely separate stories. It's not even like an A and B story because an A story is, every few minutes we go back to the A plot, right? Until it's resolved. And then we move on to the B plot in the next episode, which becomes the A story. That's not a thing in the first episode. It's just segmented. We have the Bullseye killing Foggy, the trial, the sentencing, and then we have the the Mayor Fisk story, and then we have a tease to Hector Ayala a little bit in episode one, and then episode two is the Hector story takes center stage. But again, nothing going back to Dexter or Point Dexter. It's very, very weirdly paced.
I agree. And the thing is, the Netflix series, they had like a similar pacing, like the amount of plot that was actually covered in each episode. It was slow like this, but the difference is that the Netflix was actually slow due to all the dialogue and introspection and character development. This doesn't have that, yet it has the same pacing, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, going back to like the similar point this drum we've been beating, which is that characters do things without explanations, with proper explanations. Like going back to Fisk about the mayor thing, he wins the mayor election by I want to say 53%. Like that was the amount of votes he got, 53%. he was a write-in candidate, which means that he's not the establishment, right? He's not like a real authority on politics. He's just kind of like a populist vote, which is no problem. Okay, Fisk is the populist vote.
Wait, hold on. What kind of
Why?
candidate did you say he was?
He's a populist. He's like an underdog because he's a
Mm.
write-in member. He's like, we got
Oh,
25,000
right in.
signatures.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Like he's not supposed to be there. He's like a champion of the people, even though he's a bad person. Supposedly he's going on this like I care about the people kind of crusade. But
Mm.
why do the people really rally for Fisk? Like, do you remember season three when he gets out of prison? They're like,
Yeah,
bring him
and
back
they're
in jail.
yeah,
Bring him back in
yeah.
jail.
They're protesting.
Yeah, they were protesting him. And then afterward, like he tried to sway the audience and it took a little bit. They were like, okay, maybe like after I don't remember the exact episode, but Fisk started like monologuing after he got his deal from the FBI. He's like, I've been persecuted by Daredevil and the FBI. I'm like one of you guys now. And the audience does sway for a little bit. But then the Nadim video becomes public knowledge, right? And he goes back to prison very promptly. So how did he win back all those people afterward? First off, I
I don't
don't know
know.
why he's not in prison. I don't know why 53% of New Yorkers suddenly care about him. I know that that one character is a new guy, who is like
Sherry? Oh, never mind. The fanboy.
he's a very enthusiastic aide who
Yeah.
works for Fisk
Yeah.
now. And
Hmm.
he's just like, we like you because you get stuff done. Like you're such a man of your word, and we appreciate that. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that as a reason. I've seen anecdotally that as a thing that convinces people to vote for you, right? If they
Hmm.
think you will fulfill your end of promise.
Hmm.
However, why do people think that about Fisk?
I don't know. I think
He
it
rewards
benefits
him
them to
with
be
the
vague.
whole in the next episode, but that
Yeah.
didn't happen yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the only things that if I'm from New York, what I've seen from Fisk is that he maybe killed somebody by crushing their head with a car door. Maybe he maybe escaped prison by killing lots of police officers. He faked a deal with the FBI and then got thrown out on his wedding day. Like this is all I know about Fisk if I'm a New Yorker. Like I don't know
Hmm.
anything he's done to become a self-starter, get stuff done. Like the only things I see him get stuff done is like move up the ranks as a mob boss.
Hmm.
So like why is that something that appeals to me if I'm a New Yorker? Like why do I care about that? It was just very strange how suddenly everyone's just like, oh, Fisk gets stuff done. And it's like, but why do you think that? I didn't see him do anything.
Yeah.
It
Is
is
there
just a lot of
anything episode
conveniences.
specific?
As long as we're still on episode one, I will say that it was just kind of weird that Cherry, a new character on the show, who's a former police officer, now works with Matt, also realized within like 5 minutes that Matt is Daredevil because he saw Matt take his mask off after
Hmm.
Foggy's killed. These moments were really earned in the original series. Like it took Karen, I want to say 2 seasons, like the end of season two, right? After the whole thing. It took Foggy about the whole first season to figure this out. It took
Hmm.
Kingpin 2 seasons as well. The
Hmm.
fastest it was ever done, I want to say by a main character was Frank within like 5 to 6 episodes in season two.
Yeah.
Sherry
Hmm.
found out in like 10 minutes. Like the speed running where they're trying to do like they're trying to recapture all the gold from the Netflix canon. They're trying to redo the beats,
Hmm.
but they're just
It's not
speedrunning
working.
everything.
Yeah.
Nothing's earned. Like everything's so artificial. You're just like, okay, so this is the Foggy now. Sherry's our new Foggy.
Yeah.
McDuffie's a new Karen, or maybe Heather's a new Karen. But
I
who
heard
cares?
Kirsten
Because
was a new character. Is that her name? Kirsten, the black one?
Kirsten
Or is
McDuffie,
it McDuffie? Okay.
Kirsten
Yeah.
McDuffie's her last name.
I don't like how they're replacing the characters with like similar characters. I feel like that's very lazy. Why not just use the old characters?
Well, because Dexter the Madman, he had killed one of them.
Yeah. The last thing I've noticed
Um,
about episode one is that it seems like Daredevil was using Bullseye ricochet trick with his own staff. And that's something that Bullseye did to him when he was wearing the Daredevil outfit. And I thought that was cool. But yeah, that's it.
yeah, I think that we've really exhausted like episode one, and I know episode two is like really the kickstarting of the Hector Ayala trial, the White Tiger arc.
Mhm.
Do you want to go more into detail about that?
I don't have much to say except for like theories and questions. I don't think I really have any analysis because what I said about episode one mostly applies to episode two. Like there's a lack of introspection and stuff. What about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like the start of the White Tiger arc also has the first confrontation. Is the first between Matt and Fisk? Is that the first time they square off in this season in the diner?
What do
Is
you
that the first
mean?
time they talk?
That was episode one, I believe.
Episode one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind then. We should get around to that, but that's not really that important for where I'm heading with this thread. Um,
Okay.
so the Hector arc is interesting because we see that Hector is trying to defend a seemingly innocent bystander from two people assaulting him, right? He comes down to the subway station. There are two people attacking this one guy. He tries to defend the guy. The guy runs off. In their confrontation, one of the guys gets thrown overboard onto the subway, gets hit by the oncoming subway train, right? Hector is arrested by the other guy who reveals himself to be an NYPD officer. Later, Matt at the police station overhears Hector being assaulted by more NYPD officers. He goes up, he agrees to take the case, and we realize that later there's a witness. The witness who Hector saved, Matt tracks him down and he tells him, okay, get out of here. I'm going to make sure the NYPD does not kill you because you can corroborate that Hector did not murder the guy in cold blood. It was self-defense. So now the guy runs off. Matt opens the door for NYPD who are hot on their heels and then they just assault him when they realize that not only do they assault him, they try to kill him, right? They beat him up and then Matt is like, what the heck is going on? He's holding back until he realizes they're about to kill him. Then he has to just go unleash kung fu on them and beat them up, right?
Mhm.
In this confrontation, Matt kind of pulls on the sleeve of one of the police officers, and we see like this Punisher symbol. Um, Presumably,
Is that
this means
Punisher?
that these are, yeah, the skull, the skull.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, presumably these are like a corrupt sect of police officers. We're not really sure what they're doing. We're teasing to a bigger mystery, maybe a larger conspiracy. But
Something just
the
occurred to me.
significance,
Sorry to interrupt you, but is that a reference to real life how certain groups adopted the Punisher symbol that they weren't very fond
yeah,
of? Ah, I see, I
yeah.
see. Okay. All right, continue.
So presumably, these are corrupt police officers who are appropriating the Punisher symbol for what they want to do. That's why they are taking the law into their own hands, just like Punisher did, and doing dispensing justice or whatever in the name of the Punisher, or at least appropriating his likeness. I thought this was an interesting choice, and for me, this is the first interesting scene of the first two episodes when Matt realizes that and he fights them, and then he just starts screaming. I just thought this was it's complicated though because in season three of Daredevil and most of the seasons of the original Daredevil, revelations like this would have been kept. They have held on to this revelation for later. It's given up pretty quickly in in episode two, right?
Hmm.
So I wonder what is the narrative drive of this arc, the Hector arc? Like what are the police doing? Like why are they not holding on to this kind of mystery for a little bit longer about who the police
Mm,
are? Because for all we know, it could have been a huge misunderstanding. Now we know it's definitely not. These guys are bad guys.
mm,
So I thought that was kind of sudden to give that up. I can't judge if it was the right decision just yet until we see how the rest of the story goes, but I thought it
mhm.
was interesting.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, that does warm me up to the possibility of Punisher coming back or like his role in the story because I was initially going to complain about how bringing him back would feel like fan service because in season two he had like his own subplot and he had like this interesting moral dilemma against Daredevil and he had good character development. So he had the plot, the theme, and the characters. But if you the character was resolved because we already know about Punisher now, and we know even more about him from the Punisher TV show, so you can't really rehash that. And then the theme, it seemed like it was going to like either you can rehash it or you bring him back without a theme, and then his it will feel like fan service because he doesn't serve as much of a purpose as he did the first time around. And then yeah, they can make a plot for him or whatever. But now it seems like there might be some kind of ethical dilemma for him because he'll have to think about his actions and how other people copy his actions and do it in the wrong way. So now maybe there's something there for him.
I just wonder now, going back to what we talked about, like Wilson Fisk's support from the police, like, are these the people who support Wilson Fisk? Like, that's marginally more like agreeable if they're bad people. So they, of course, they'd be with the bad person. But I would still need to learn more about what this group's intentions is
Mm.
to understand why they would support Fisk.
Yeah, because Fisk
Um,
never did anything justice. He never did anything for like the greater good. Or at least he thinks he did, but I mean, do we really see that? Do we really see him actually helping out others apart from himself? I don't think so. At least in the
not
first three
in
seasons.
any not in any meaningful way that I recall where he did something altruistic that was significant. I
Yeah.
don't remember that. and I definitely don't remember him benefiting police officers in any way at all.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just think like this might be one of the most interesting story nuggets, and I wish that the story was paced better so we could have gone to this scene earlier. Like I said, it's the very last scene of the second episode.
Wait, I thought you said you wanted it to happen later.
Well, I wish that the reveal came later, but I wish that this Hector story was moving like this instead of like this long like Mayor Fisk thing. Like it's weird. The first episode's weird because that's the episode where he wins the election,
Yep.
and it almost feels like why couldn't the story start out with Fisk? Like it's a year later. You could have told me like in the year Fisk was already elected mayor. Like there's kind of
Yeah.
this pomp about like the election, and then he just cruises to victory. There's not really any special,
There's no
you know,
obstacle.
yeah, it's not like it's like the A story is Matt versus the NYPD corrupted officers, right? And the B story is Fisk running for mayor. It's not like that at all. The A story is like Matt getting over Bullseye's murder of Foggy, and then the B story is like Wilson Fisk reconnecting with Vanessa more so than it is about the mayor race. Mayor race is pretty wrapped up pretty easily without any kind of conflict. He just cruises on the
Mhm.
scene. Everyone agrees with him. He cruises to victory. Moving on. Um, yeah.
Is there anything else you had to say about episode two?
I think just like I have some interest in how Hector's story is resolved now because seemingly it
Hmm.
involves Frank and it involves like a larger conspiracy. So I would
Hmm.
hope that the larger conspiracy answers like what their mission is. Like all these people with puncture tattoos, like what is their mission? I want to see that. I want to see Frank's reaction to this as well. And I want to see how they're taken down or if they're not taken down, like how the story goes. That's my expectations for the rest of the arc.
Based on your
How about
knowledge
you?
of comics, what kind of theories do you have for the cop mystery? Is there anything similar in the comics that they could be citing?
I'm not familiar with any people in comics appropriating the symbol.
Hmm.
It seems more like a social commentary about real life than it is
Um,
about any straight story being adapted. Hector's okay, well, Hector's trial is a straight arc. Like that is a real thing in the comics, but it does not involve like crooked cops. It's like a huge misunderstanding.
is it
Um,
Daredevil's story?
yeah,
Okay.
Matt still
Hmm.
represents Hector for a very similar circumstance.
Hmm.
Except there's no crooked cop angle. It's just like a big misunderstanding, and that's how that comic goes. And it was pretty well handled.
Hmm. I thought one th interesting thing is that Heather, which is Matt's girlfriend, she's become Fisk's therapist, and I think that Matt will try to use information. He'll try to use her as like a mold to try and get information on them, which is kind of like Billy in season one. I don't know if you saw that, but that could definitely create an interesting dynamic in the story, and it probably will lead to them breaking up, or it might not. But I'm interested in seeing where that goes. There was also Fisk's knuckles were bruised in one scene. Did you see that?
Yeah,
Do you have any theories as to why that is?
I honestly don't think it's going to come back up ever again.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
I will say there's one interesting parallel, and I genuinely think they did it by accident, which is that, as you said, Fisk and Vanessa start couples therapy with Heather. They talk about how after Fisk was shot, presumably talked about after Hawkeye, where Echo shoots Fisk, how he was like need recuperation, he needed recovery, and he had to be left alone for months. How Vanessa took over the criminal empire, but after he got better, they were still kind of apart. They were kind of distant, and how their relationship took a huge strain for that, which parallels how Karen and Matt were after Foggy's death, where Matt pulled himself away from her. And then after he
Mm-hmm.
tried to reach back out to her, she pulled herself away from him.
Hmm.
And ultimately, after Bullseye is sentenced, we see that Karen has no interest in reconnecting with Matt. She doesn't want to do it. Matt wants to, but she won't let him. And now Matt has to move on. Cut to a year later, he's moving on with Heather. Karen is in San Francisco now, so she's not even in the plot anymore. Very
Yeah.
strange decision because you are implying that Vanessa and Fisk have a stronger love or bond than Karen and Matt do.
Did they? Didn't they though? In the earlier seasons, it kind of gave off that vibe. Like Fisk would do anything for Vanessa and never argue with her. So I think, at least to me, it felt like they had a stronger bond. It felt like Fisk was like absolutely obsessed with Vanessa. Meanwhile, I'm kind of in a toxic way because like they never really question each other. And like Vanessa is willing to join the criminal life. Wasn't she like just an innocent regular person before she met Fisk?
Yeah.
So she
Yeah,
was
she was
willing
just like
to
an
make
art
herself a
gallery deal.
criminal just for this one man. So like technically their love is stronger, but also kind of in a toxic way. So I mean, I didn't notice that too much.
Yeah, I just wish that if they're gonna write in parallels that they get deepened because I think like if you want to make that kind of statement, if you want to make that subtext that Karen and Matt are more distant than Fisk and Vanessa, I just want to see that taken to like a deeper level than where we're at right now. And granted, it could become more apparent as the show goes on, or they can forget Karen, which is what I think is going to happen. So
Hmm.
it might go nowhere.
Yeah. You said you wanted to cover Matt versus Fisk from episode one when
Oh,
they're in
I
the
was gonna
diner.
say. Oh yeah, yes. Okay, so this is the most interesting. I'm using that lightly. This is the deepest conversation of going back and forth between Matt and Fisk is at the diner scene, right? And
Hmm.
in the scene, Matt, right before he asks Fisk, like, "Hey, we need to talk. It's very important." Fisk agrees, and it's oddly cordial. Matt says he doesn't really trust Fisk, that he won't become a criminal again. And Fisk says, well, I don't really care. But also, like, as soon as I become mayor, I am going to outlaw you and other superheroes in the city. Like, I will do that. But Matt says he's retired. So it's like, well, it won't really apply to me, I guess. And Fisk is like, well, you better stay retired. And Matt says, well, you better stay a good guy, or at least don't commit any more crimes, and I won't come after you. Strange scene again, because I don't know how Matt could ever abide by Fisk being out on the streets. A huge part of, season three, going back to season three again, a huge part of that season was Matt being like, this guy cannot even be in a hotel room supervised by the FBI. It's too much power. He's got too much freedom. He was at house arrest at the hotel. Now he's the
Hmm.
mayor of New York City, seemingly without any police like investigations on him. He's like in the clear. He's now mayor. And Matt, after losing Foggy, is like, well, I'm okay with this as long as he pinky promises not to do anything bad. I think Matt lets him get off the hook insanely here. And to a lesser extent, I think Fisk also lets Matt off the hook, although this comes like before or after conversation with Vanessa where she says like just leave Matt alone. Like just let this kind of sleeping log lay, right? Like it's not a big deal. It's like it's over. And Fisk's like, okay. This actually
Hmm.
works for Fisk because Fisk, there's seemingly no problem with Matt. If he is retired, you don't need to really berate this, right? But Matt,
Hmm.
why would you let Fisk off just because he promises to?
I think it's a symptom of a greater problem, which you talked about before, is the vagueness, because we don't know how Fisk got out of jail. And if Fisk got out of jail, Matt should have tried, logically, as he was in the other story, he would have tried to do everything to put him back in jail. But since we just skip over that and we don't even cover how he got out of jail, we don't even really have an answer for why Matt didn't try to put him in jail. And because the characters, the writers are trying to do this story where Fisk is the mayor, they kind of just have to gloss over the fact that this man committed multiple crimes in the previous seasons, got put in jail, and he has someone out there who wants to keep him in jail. So they kind of just have to rewrite things and just make it convenient for what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's just like there's a strange like there should be, in my opinion, an understanding if you're doing a story that takes place at a significant time from the last story where they left off. There's some basic questions the audience is going to have, especially if you change circumstances and conditions of where your new story is. You need to
Mm,
explain certain elements, and as of this minute, has anything been like if any deviations from the original show have they been explained? Not that many, if any, right? Fisk is out of prison. We don't know why or how. Bullseye got out of prison. We don't know why or how. Bullseye killed
yeah.
Foggy, a main character from the original show. We don't know why. Yeah, it's just like you're borrowing the toys from the old show. You're playing with them. You're not putting it back in the chest. Like
Mm,
you can't just show me like the old things that we saw from before and not explain why they're being utilized in the new story and expect me to be excited about what I'm seeing right now.
mm,
And we see that a lot with Fisk, actually. We see a little bit with Matt, but more so with Fisk, where he's just kind of cruising to like all anything he wants, he gets it because the people like him, apparently.
mm. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that it apparently is confirmed that Foggy's actor is coming back for season two. Do you think that he's actually going to be revived, or do you think he's just going to be in flashback scenes?
I mean, my intuition says that it's going to be flashback, and I have a couple of reasons for this, but I'll also ask you once I'm wrapping up. My first two reasons why is because I think Foggy is dead. I think he's
Hmm.
dead. first off, Matt heard him die, right? That's the whole, and he's got very good intuition. Secondly, Dex is sentenced to murder, 11 counts, so 10 of them were probably just bar patrons, whoever was in the bar, and the other one was Foggy.
Hmm.
So like how would I heard theories that like Foggy's in witness protection, and it's like you can't, that's not how witness protection works. You can't like convict a person for an imaginary murder.
Hmm.
If you say if you charge him with the death, he has to be dead. Unless
Hmm.
Foggy tricked Matt and he tricked Karen and he tricked Dex and he tricked the US government. I don't know why Foggy would do that. I don't know
Maybe
like
they're gonna
why on earth.
they revived a lecture, right?
That was different though. Like that like straight up borderline kind of magic.
I
Like
think they're gonna
why
use
would
ma I think they might use magic.
I mean like why would the hand want Foggy?
I wouldn't put it past these writers if I'm being honest. But then there was
I
also
think
the actors. They said that they made a controversial decision, and they said I don't know if I agree with it. So maybe he stays dead.
yeah. So like I know the interview you're talking about, Charlie Cox, is like
Yeah.
someone's asking about the trauma. Charlie says basically like there's a huge trauma very early on in the show, seemingly implying he's talking about Foggy's death. And he
Hmm.
says like we had to come back swinging. We have to come back with a bigger, crazy idea that we've never seen before to kind of earn returning after so many years. Then he says, I'm not sure if we did the right decision though. So if you
Hmm.
tell me that he's going to return, why is Charlie making a big deal out of him dying?
Hmm. So what else do you have on your notes? Because I'm done.
Okay. I think that we should talk about Muse. Um, so right now they're slowly peppering with a couple scenes that he is interested, he needs help. That's all we know about Muse really. And it looks like that he graffitied something about Mayor Fisk, right?
Can you give us a little backstory about
Um,
Muse in case someone doesn't know?
Muse, from my recollection, I did not read a Charles Soule run, but I do know that Muse is a serial killer, right? And I believe he's a mutant, right? Now that Disney owns Fox, they can just make him a mutant, right? He's a
Hmm.
mutant, and Matt has a really hard time detecting him based on his mutant powers. He's a serial killer. Presumably, he'll be doing the same kind of things in this show that he was doing in the comics.
What was he doing in the
And
comics?
he was just killing people.
Okay.
So, not unlike a certain madman with perceived grudges. So, we're doing that again.
Okay.
Um, and hold on, they are doing Dex again. He
What do you
needs
mean?
help from a psychiatrist. This is exactly what Dex did with Dr. Mercer.
Wait, who's Muse's secret identity?
I
Oh,
don't
has he
know
been
his
shown in
name.
the show? Wait, then how do you know he needs a psychiatrist? The leaks?
He tells her. He tells her that at the book signing.
Oh, that's Muse. Oh,
The white
that's
guy.
what. Oh, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm caught up now.
So there's, I think, episode one near the ending. There's just this guy from the back. We can't see him, but he's like graffitiing
Yeah,
Wilson
Fisk.
Fisk, right?
Yeah.
And I know that Amusement Comics also likes to do that little Banksy art, right? Then we
Hmm.
see Muse, but in his civvies, goes up to Dr. Heather, whatever her name is.
Yeah, Heather.
He
Heather.
talks to Heather, he's like, I need help. And she's like, okay, here's my email. So presumably Muse will have more scenes with Heather. And that's when Tether. So there's going to be a rich B story here, probably. We have Heather with like the couple's counseling with Fisk, right? We have
Yeah.
Heather with Matt. We have Heather with Muse, who needs his own help. So it looks like to me that the Muse arc is unrelated to the Hector arc with the
Hmm.
evil appropriating Punisher
Punisher.
police officers, right? So we're gonna pepper the B story for this Hector arc with Muse going to therapy and needing help and talking about like, oh my goodness, I have these ideas, I have these like I can't control these impulses, whatever, to Heather. Of course, something's gonna snap, right? And
Hmm.
then as the season goes on, Matt's gonna have to take on Muse as a serial killer.
That sounds like
Going
Punisher
back
season two
Going back to that point though, like it does sound exactly like what Dex did in season three, except not as interesting.
and Punisher season two with Billy and the therapist. And he's Dario. Dario was somewhat related to that story as well. He was a writer for a couple episodes.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you don't like Muse. I'm understanding that you don't like where they're going with Muse.
Um, let me make my conditions right now. If the story deviates from what I'm predicting and it does a good job of executing its goal, then I'll be fine with that. But if this is what the story happens, if this is what happens, Muse needs help. He has these ideas. He has these thoughts. He has these impulses. He needs to hurt people. He hears these voices. His dad's abusive. His mom's abusive. His uncle's abusive. Whatever. If that's what we're going with, and he's telling Heather this, and then there's a misunderstanding where she says something and it sets him off, and he snaps, and then he has to become a serial killer. If that's what it is, then I'm not interested in the Muse story.
What if she begins to have romantic relationships with him?
I don't think it's gonna happen.
They did it in Punisher.
Did that happen?
Yeah, season two, Billy. He had a romantic relationship with his therapist.
You know what would be interesting?
What?
If Muse kills Heather,
Heather? Oh man.
and then Matt is again tested to kill Muse, and or if Fisk is like, wait, I liked Heather's. Every now and then Fisk will have a little favorite little puppy he likes to play with, and when they get hurt, he gets very triggered, like his mom. Like he'll just
Hmm.
become attached to some people. I wonder if Heather is going to be a support for Fisk to the point where Matt wants to be take down Muse. Fisk wants to arrest Muse because he's the mayor and he's against vigilantes, against probably vigilante criminals as well, or super criminals. And if they end up working together to bring down Muse, is that where we're going? I don't know.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, but what are your expectations for the Muse character? Where do you think they're going with it? What do you want to see from it? Is it the same thing?
I want to see something different from Dex and Billy. That's the main thing. Where they go with it specifically, I don't mind that much. I like the idea that you brought up because that's an interesting dynamic. But specifically, I don't want it to be too similar to what Dex and Billy did because I feel like it'd be rehashing the same ideas and it'd feel lazy and uncreative.
Honestly, like if we are trying to workshop theory craft right now, I would say that Heather dying would be more interesting if Foggy didn't just die.
Yeah, yeah.
Because now you're like aping off your own story from 6 episodes ago instead of
Hmm.
being brand new. Because very few good main characters, good guy main characters died in Daredevil, right? Actually, it's not
Yeah.
true. A lot of good guys died. Nadine died. Lansom died. Ben Urich
Yurik.
died. But that's kind of it, right? About three over 3 seasons was that like 36 episodes or something. So it didn't happen that often.
Hmm.
In Daredevil Born Again, we started like the first like 90 seconds Foggy dies. Now, if Heather dies, it's gonna be like, okay, you're again speed running through this. Like what should be super climactic story arcs and climaxes are now tired. And that should not
Hmm.
be the reaction if you kill a main character. It should be much more emphatic than again, we're doing it again. You're doing
Hmm.
Dex again. Now you're gonna do the Flocky death again. Like, are we really gonna do the Muse is like Dex, and then he also kills Heather.
Hmm. Did you have anything else in your notes?
I would just say I hope that the story arcs become tighter. I want to see them have more unified ideas. That first episode was very choppy, as I already said. And I think that the art of writing TV is you need to write your A stories and pepper B and C stories throughout it. Ideally, when you're writing TV, you want to have the A story. So right now, in episode two, the A story is how is Hector going to get off the case? Is he going to get
Hmm.
convicted? Is he going to be not guilty? That's the A story right now. Seemingly, we have this conspiracy with corrupt police officers with the Punisher symbol.
Hmm.
We also have Mayor Fisk. Then we also have the Muse story of him needing help.
Yeah.
So I want to see, ideally, that the B and C stories will tie into the A story. And if that's not the
Yeah.
case, like if the Muse story is completely unrelated to the A story that is Hector, it needs to in some way parallel comment on the Hector story.
Hmm.
That's how I feel. Otherwise, it's gonna be very choppy.
All right. Did you have any extra praises, ending praises for the story? Because we critiqued it a lot.
I liked the ending of two when Matt just like goes off against the two corrupt police officers.
Hmm.
I like that scene. I think it looked cool, and I like seeing Matt driven to breaking points, and this was a small breaking point. So it's not the worst we've ever seen the character, and you could argue that the worst we ever saw him was like the episode before when Foggy dies, except that was very rushed. And this one took its time. It took the entire episode to the very end, and then Matt reaches a breaking point, not the breaking point, but a breaking point.
Hmm.
So it felt deserved, and I was interested to see like how he kind of navigates this new circumstance of corrupt police officers. Seemingly now they know he can fight as well.
Hmm.
So like maybe there's a no point of we're at a point of no return with the character. Maybe some people will figure out he's Daredevil. Um, but yeah, what are your praises?
I like the introductory fight scene. I like the way they did it in one take. I thought it looked really cool. I know people didn't like the CG. The CG did look a little awkward, but overall, I did enjoy it. I like the way he was doing the ricochet attacks. And yeah, that's mostly it, if I'm being honest. Everything is so far it's slow. It hasn't really gotten anywhere. I did like the little mystery of where Matt was like spying on those guys, and then he figured out where they were going, and that's how he saved them at the end of episode two. I like that kind of like detective kind of stuff. And that's mostly it.
What's behind?
When he was spying on the police officers and he was using his super hearing to kind of hear what they were saying, wasn't he following a police guy in episode two? That's how
I
he
thought
called
Frank.
Cherry to get.
I thought Sherry told him.
No, Cherry told him about the white tiger.
He didn't give the location.
No, he gave Cherry the location.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah,
I also like the way Cherry was going through her stuff, and I like the kind of investigative stuff, and I like to see more of that.
I thought that was actually kind of weird how Sherry figures it out because for two reasons. One, the wife just lets him. Like the wife knows he's the white tiger, right? Like it's not a
Yeah,
secret. It's actually straining their marriage. The fact she knows he's the white tiger. And then
yeah,
Sherry just walks to his room, and the wife is doesn't like, wait, actually no, don't go in there. Like, would that be
yeah.
like? Couldn't we just
Convenient.
like have the wife be like, hey, don't go in there? And Sherry's like, listen, I need to do my work. Just pushes her out of the way, or not pushes her, but he moves through like a little conflict, a little friction. Like it's
Yeah, obstacle, some kind of obstacle.
yeah, like the good dialogue and good exposition should be met with some level of resistance. Because if you tell me, don't go in a room, now I'm like, what's in the room? Cherry just
Hmm.
walks in the room and just casually finds the white tiger outfit. It could not have been less dramatic in any other way if they did anything else. Like it was
Hmm.
weird. And there's so many opportunities where you could just make it more dramatic by having just an ounce more of resistance.
Hmm.
And people, like I said, like Fisk is met with at this moment only Commissioner Gallagher, Gallo,
Gallo.
Gallo, like not even Daredevil is resisting Fisk, right? Gallo's the only one, and I think subtly those are some of the best scenes as well. When Gallo's just reading Fisk the riot at, he's like, "Oh, you're coming to like a funeral like after it's over. It's like you got some balls on you." Like that's like more interesting than any of the other Fisk scenes because no one else is trying to oppose his will.
Hmm. All
But
right.
yeah,
Is that all? Is that all?
I think that's it. I think that
All right.
satisfies everything.
All right. I'll take us out this time. Well, folks, that's all from us for today. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next time on the Podcraft.